So Bioware just scared the hell out of me by their recent decision to lay off about 50 people from their business because they said that they need to shift to a more aligned and more focused studio. Oh, Bioware, this is the thing I was talking about in my last video. How I was so concerned with Bioware's direction with Dragon Age Dreadwolf. And this is the stuff that I'm talking about. So in today's video, we're gonna go over their blog post and we're gonna take a look and see what they're talking about. So let's go ahead and get started with it. So this blog post was written by their general manager, Gary McKay, and he was basically going over the state of the studio and what direction they were looking to go into. And uh this quote really kind of this quote really made my antennas perk up a little bit. It says that this vision balances this vision balances the current needs of the studio, namely ensuring Dragon Age Dreadwolf is an outstanding game with its future, including the success of the next Mass Effect. That right there, I have a problem with that statement because of the fact that they are assuming that they're going to have a chance to have a new Mass Effect. And I'm going to explain this later on in the video of why I think this is such a big deal. But he goes on to say that if you're wondering how all of this will impact the development of Dragon Age Dreadwolf, let me be clear that our dedication to the game has never wavered. Our commitment remains steadfast, and we are all working to make this game worthy of the Dragon Age name. We are confident that we'll have the time needed to ensure Dreadwolf reaches its full potential. So Dragon Age Dreadwolf is rumored. Dragon Age Dreadwolf is rumored to come out sometime in 2024. So they're letting us know by getting rid of 50 people from their studio. They're gonna have a more focused group, and they'll be able to have Dreadwolf created in a higher quality. So if you're talking about a studio that has 5,000 employees or 2,000 employees, okay, 50 people, although those people who lost their job, it's a devastating experience from a business standpoint. Having 2,000 or 5,000 employees really isn't that big of a deal. But I did a little research, and as of 2019, Bioware has 320 employees. So let's just say that number stayed true for 4 years and they fired 50 people. So you're telling me now that they have about 270 employees. That's huge. You need those 50 people in order to, in my opinion, make sure that the game comes out with great quality. And how many of those 50 people were testers to make sure that the bugs in this game get polished out? How many of those 50 people were programmers or even developers that they can get those bugs out of the game and make sure that the gameplay experience is as polished as possible? See, this is the problem I have with BioWare. You haven't done anything in years. The community is already nervous about your product, and especially with Baldur's Gate 3 being out, we're even more worried about your product. And so I said earlier in the video that I was going to talk about how I think it's foolish for them to assume that EA is going to give them the chance to even have a next Mass Effect. So, peep this. EA has closed around 14 studios. That's a lot of damn studios. They've closed 14 studios, and a lot of those studios created some of the most iconic games that we used to play back in the early and mid 2000s and the early 2010s. So I'm going to give a couple of examples of the studios that were closed, and I'm going to try to compare it as best I can to BioWare. So let's start off with Visceral Games. Visceral Games was the studio that was responsible for Dante's Inferno, for the Dead Space series, and also they did make some Battlefield games. The last game that they created was Battlefield Hardline. And that game wasn't even bad. It was average at best. And this is the last game that they created before EA shut them down. So you would think that them making Dante's Inferno and Dead Space 1 and 2, 3 was the start of them having a downturn because of all of the microtransactions that they put in the game, but that was because of EA doing. They forced them to do that, but that's another story for another day. But they're responsible for the Dead Space series and also Dante Inferno. And all because they made a Battlefield game that they normally don't make because they are an action adventure studio. They make single player games. And EA pushed them into making this game. It was so mediocre by the fans and by the critics, and it was so hated by Battlefield purists that EA shut them down. Let's go to studio number 2, Pandemic Studios. Now, Pandemic Studios, they were responsible for some games like Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2. Not the ones we got like 6-7 years ago. I'm talking about the ones back in the early 2000s on PS2, the good ones. They made those. They made also they were responsible for Destroy All Humans. And they made my personal favorite, The Saboteur. The Saboteur was the last game that they created. And if you look at the Metacritic, it did very well. Had a 76 amongst critics, had a 7.8 amongst users. These are scores that you actually look forward to, and it's from a game that was a brand new IP. Nobody really heard of it. They really didn't market it all that well, but it still performed very well. EA shut them down too. So you telling me that two studios that had a game in Battlefront, two studios that had a game in Battlefield Hardlines that was mediocre, and a game as in The Saboteur that was actually good, got these two studios shut down, and Bioware expects to have Dreadwolf come out after they put out the trash that was Mass Effect Andromeda and Anthem, and they expect EA to not shut them down if Dreadwolf is a flop. They lost their damn mind. I don't know how they could sit here and say that they're going to be working on the next Mass Effect when you haven't even gotten Dreadwolf out yet. This is the most pivotal point of the development for Dreadwolf. We haven't even seen any gameplay yet. And you lay off 50 people? See, yes, if you're talking about, hey, they laid off these 50 people because they were trying to get all of the cooks out the kitchen and have a clear vision on what's going to happen with the game. Okay, I get that, but you don't have to get rid of 50 people because those people, I believe, was probably crucial in the development, especially if they were testers. Now, we don't know who they were, but we don't know what their role was. But I'm just saying 50 people from a studio that has about 300 employees is a massive, massive cut. So that kind of tells me that Daddy EA probably told them, hey, you gotta cut some fat here so we can save a little money. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. Because you have Dragon Age Dreadwolf coming out, rumored to be next year. All hands are on deck. And you cannot afford to have this game come out to be a flop. You cannot afford to have your game be a buggy, riddled mess. Just like Immortals of Avium. Frame rate issues all day long. Just like Jedi Survivor. Frame rate issues throughout the whole game. I don't even know if it's even fixed to this point. You cannot afford, BioWare, to have this problem. Because if you do, you're out of here. EA is going to cut you loose. But that's all I got for this video, guys. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? How do you feel about BioWare firing 50 people before Dreadwolf comes out? And how you think Dreadwolf is going to even be? If you liked the video, smash that like button. If you did not, let me know why in the comments. And I'll holler at you guys later. This is Gad, and I'm out.